you hear a Dre beat and you know it's a Dre beat because you got those pianos, you got the strings, you have the drums a certain way. And if you want to be impactful and leave kind of a lasting mark, you have to find what it is that you can do that other people can't.
1, 2, yeah. Come on. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Yes, sir, you are tuned in. This is for the SB1200, ASR 10s and NPC heroes. This is for the crate digging, loop getting, sound manipulators, the Fruity Loop reasoning machine innovators that pump the bass and frequently freak the kick in a stand till it slaps in your speakers. The sound providers that make sure the song is tight. Shout out to the producers, beats grinding live. Shout out to the producers, beats grinding live.
Welcome to the Beats Grinding Life podcast with your host Siren, a weekly interview podcast with inspiring music producers, where every week you will learn from a different music producer how to potentially take your music career to the next level.
What's up, Beat Grinders? This is another episode of Beats Grinding Life. I'm your host Siren Beats. And I am grateful and thrilled for this episode because not only are you tuning in, but we have a very special guest, and that's Samarei. Samarei is a music producer, composer, multi-instrumentalist from Portland, Oregon. He is a graduate of Portland State University where he studied music composition. He has worked with artists and producers Illmaculate, Pinder, Luck One, Glenn Waco, Mike Capes, Open Mike Eagle, the Olympics, and past Beats Grinding Life guest Trox. Yo, what's up, Samarei? How you doing, man?
Doing good. How are you, man?
Oh, I'm great, man. It's always good to talk to, someone from my hometown, Portland, doing their thing, man. So it's a pleasure to have you up on here.
No doubt, no doubt.
Awesome, man. Okay. All right, man. Well, I just read a brief intro on you, man. If you want to expand on that intro and tell the listeners a little more about yourself, man, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'm a producer out here in Portland, Oregon, and I started mainly just studying playing instruments, and then I went to school for that, and it's just kind of been following the path, whether it be DJing, producing, engineering, or even playing, like doing replays and stuff for other producers. I just kind of been following me where the wind takes me at this point.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, you're all things music, man. You pretty much do it all, man. You're Swiss Army knife.
Yeah.
That's dope, man. Okay, man. Well, here on Beats Grinding Life, man, how we start things out is we want to know the beginnings, man. We know that you do it all. You've gone to Portland State, but we want to know, man, where did it all start out for you? How did you get into music production?
So I started producing a little bit when I was a little later for me. It was when I was about 18.
Okay.
And I started sending out beats and stuff. But primarily, I got into it because that's the music I enjoyed listening to. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. At that point, I was in college studying music, and my main instrument was guitar. And I was doing jazz studies and composition, and just trying to figure out where I wanted to go with it. And the thing I felt most passionate about and listened to the most, besides at that point, classical music and symphonies and stuff, was all hip hop. So I tried to take a look at it and see where I could approach it from a fresh perspective.
Okay, man. Well, unfortunately, one thing that I missed out on the intro was that you are an iStandard showcase winner. Yeah. The year before you won, I was in a showcase with you. How old were you when I met you in that showcase before you won?
Let's see. That was
that around that time?
Yeah, I'm trying to think what year that was. That was
I can't even remember. It was a while back.
I feel like it was 2012. Actually, that was a little bit later.
Okay.
I didn't really ever, at least locally, I hadn't done any work with any artists producing or anything until I graduated from college.
Okay.
So I think that was the first year I was out of school and really started to approach it with a little bit more, a lot more time, Mm-hmm. I wasn't as distracted, and that's where I wanted to put my energy. So I think that was like, I want to say that was like 2012 or 2013. I think Theory was at that one.
Yep.
Theory has it. Yeah.
Yep. Theory won that one. Nice, man. Okay. I mean, you guys, Samarei is definitely inspiration. I remember at that beat showcase, I can't remember what you placed. I want to say maybe it was 4th or maybe it was 5th. But
it was somewhere down there.
Yeah, man.
Somewhere down
there. But man, that next year you came back, man, and you won that thing, man. That's awesome, man. That kind of speaks to your level of persistence. You know, you didn't give up or anything, and you kept going with it, man. That's awesome. That's a great story to hear, man.
No, you always got big thing is learning to take your lumps when you get them at that point. That was a big learning moment for me.
Dope, man. Dope. Okay, man. Well, we know that you're a multi-instrumentalist. You play tons of instruments. We can see that on Instagram. If you guys aren't following this guy on Instagram, you definitely need to do that because man, he's playing he's composing some great music on there and showing you all the instruments that he uses. But I want to know, man, what did you start off with music? What was the first instrument that you had? And then when you started making beats, what was the first piece of software or hardware that you made beats with?
Okay, yeah. So when I started getting into music, besides like elementary school stuff like the recorder and all that, the first instrument that I really wanted to learn was playing the guitar. Okay. And I took lessons forever. I was left-handed, so I had a really slow start because I tried to play guitar right-handed. Mm-hmm. I quit a couple times. This is gonna be a real inspirational story.
Man, we see persistence.
a lot of quitting involved. No, but I started that when I was like 12 years old. I started playing guitar, and I went from just kind of going through the motions, like, okay, let's really try this, to by the time I was like 16, I was like changing out of all my school stuff. I was taking classes online so I'd have more time to practice. Wow. And I knew that's what I was going to go to college for. And eventually what I wanted to do with my life is just, I was at that point, I wanted to be like playing as like a studio musician or just playing in a band, kind of wherever I could find with the guitar, what I could do with the guitar. But
right.
At the same time, I was like, I started dabbling. I was like, I wonder what you could do with the guitar and making like hip hop stuff at this time. Mm-hmm. And I actually picked up an ASR 10 was my first piece of like gear that I learned how to at least like sample and everything on.
Dope, nice.
So I was trying to make some music on that, and I had no idea what I was doing. And I think it was like Logic 7 or something. And I couldn't even figure out how to turn it on for like 3 months. I was like looking at it. I'd click into it. I couldn't figure out what the windows did. Mm-hmm. I finally got everything figured out, and I was recording some real bad songs in there. Those will never see the light of the day.
Oh, come on.
I think I've purged them from every drive at this point.
Right.
But no, I was just kind of like experimenting with that. I got a bass around that time. And I was like, oh, I guess I can learn how to play the bass really quick. And then from being in school, I was taking vocal lessons, and as a music major, everybody learns how to play at least a proficient level of like keyboard. Mm-hmm. So just started trying to figure out everything I could learn and just kind of add to my craft.
Dope, man. That's awesome. The one thing that kind of stuck out to me was that you took classes online and you focused on music. I mean, your parents had to be super supportive of your dreams and your goals, man. I mean, I don't think my mom would have let me do that, nor my dad. So that's awesome that they saw your vision and they let you go forward with it, man.
Yeah, no, it was one of those things. I was bored in school anyway. I was more at risk of not finishing it because it was too easy at points. Like it just wasn't finding much of a challenge, and right. And one thing that's like, I'm not like a naturally gifted musician. Like some people, you feel like, oh, they pick it up and they learned it the first day, and like right. You know, they're like, oh, they just took it to like fish to water. I was not that. I struggled and struggled and struggled, and that challenge was like one of the first times, like especially in school and everything, I was like, I'm really challenged by something, and I kind of took that to heart and wanted to. It's been kind of like a prove 'em wrong kind of mentality the whole time.
Dope, man. That's awesome, man. That's great, man. It just kind of seems like we're building a theme for this interview. I mean, just proving people wrong when you know, and then also your persistence, man. It's a great story, man. Okay, man. Well, you started off with the ASR 10, man. I want to know when you first started making beats, who were some of the producers that inspired you? Who made you want to make hip hop music?
The ASR specifically was because I was into RZA and what he was doing. Mm-hmm. I just liked how just grimy and like perfectly basic some of those beats were. You had like your drum layer, you had your sample layer, and you had your bass. Mm-hmm. Nothing else. Right. Like that's just all you needed. And I remember I was reading like one of the Wu-Tang books that they put out. I can't remember which one it was, but they were going through all the gear, and I was like, okay, if I'm going to try to get a piece of hardware, I should get the hardware that I like the sound of.
Right. Yep.
So that was a big one. Kanye West, again, I didn't even know happened to be some of those early beats with the ASR as well. Like, you know, like that early sampling. But those were the two kind of like first ones that really like, okay, I see where I started paying attention to the production more than the rap.
Nice. And some other legendary producers have used that as well, man. It's a legendary piece. So.
It is.
For sure, man. Okay. All right, man. Well, I mean, you talked about you know, a lot of the setbacks that you've had already in the episode, man. But we're just gonna drag you through the mud just a little bit longer, man. I want to know, man, what is one major setback or failure that sticks out to you that you can tell us about, so maybe we can avoid that mistake or we can learn from your setback or failure.
You know, I think one overarching thing is at least that I've learned from, there's a lot of failure in the music business. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that makes a musician great, in my opinion, is how they deal with it. Mm-hmm. Because like I went from going like every week having to do a performance live in front of like serious musicians, and then just have them rip you apart. Wow. Like, and that's like the mentality that was every day. And it was just like, okay, I had my first like composition lesson. They looked at my music and they're like, oh, this is a good start. And then they just kind of threw it all in the garbage can. And it's like, let's start from scratch. There's lots of like setbacks and failures. You touched on like the iStandard one that first time. And I was like, the biggest thing that I realized is that they're not really failures unless you have the expectation, depending on where your expectations are. Right. If you go into something with the right mindset and the right outlook on it, nothing's really ever a failure. You're just learning. And that's kind of how I've been trying to approach things, because you get told no thousands of times for every time you get told yes doing this. And if you take that to heart, or you don't take anything from it, then it's just daunting. But if you're like, okay, they didn't like that beat, like, what do they like? You go dig into their discography, like, okay, I see what I did wrong there. But then your next batch of beats that you put together, the next songs you do are going to be better for it. Right. So it's like, you just have to have the right outlook to learn from any sort of setbacks, and because they're going to come, and there's going to be more than you'd like to admit of them. Wow. And that's the realest thing for me. That is real, man. That's awesome. That was a great answer, man. I mean, that was the best answer that I think that you could have given, man, is your outlook. You know, how are you going to take, you know, any situation, whether it's a failure or it's a positive situation? What do you take from that situation? What do you learn from it? You know, and it's, you know, it's like a coin, you know, there's two sides of it. You can you know, take it as in a negative, or you can take it in a positive, you know. And so thank you for touching on that, man. I appreciate that, man. That's pretty awesome right there, man. And also what you said about expectation, you know, you can't really expect too much. I know last week
on the show, we had Electric, and he was pretty much saying the same thing. Don't expect too much. You know, yeah, you want to have high hopes, but you know, you don't want to expect too much from certain situations. You just want to keep your head down, work, and whatever comes from it. You know,
definitely.
He also recommended that musicians, and this, what you were saying about you playing in front of experienced musicians and them ripping you apart. He was saying that it's great to intern. That way you can get slapped around and you can know from experienced musicians or experienced engineers what you're doing wrong, what you're doing right on a daily basis. So
that's a good piece of advice too. Yeah, because there's too many things for one person to figure out on their own. You need somebody to tell you when you mess up.
That's awesome. That's true, man. Nice. Okay. All right, man. Well, gems are dropping everywhere, man. Thank you for this, man. But we need to hop on the other side of this, man. I mean, we're talking about all the negatives and all the setbacks, and you know, we want to brighten the mood up a little bit here, man. So I want to know, on the other side of that, man, what's the greatest experience or the greatest achievement that you had in your career thus far?
You know, I think outside of, it wouldn't be just like a tangible, like, oh, I did a song with so and so or something like that. I think the coolest thing for me is just kind of the getting to live like the life that I want to live and getting to experience some things that I never would have thought I got to do.
Awesome.
I've been taken from producing for people. They ended up needing a DJ, and I ended up going up to Canada. I got to get a passport for the first time. I got to leave the country.
Nice.
And that was cool. Like, I got to tour across the country and doing like a show every night and playing at all these like legendary clubs across the East Coast and stuff. And like, I'd never even been to the East Coast. Like, it was like the places I've got to go and the people I've got to like connect with and like just learn from has been probably the coolest thing for me. Because the songs come and go, and I feel like I don't want to like hang my hat on like, oh, this is the best track I've ever done, because that kind of implies that I'm not going to top it.
Right. Yeah.
And I feel like if I don't dislike the songs I did like 6 months ago, I feel like I'm not growing enough.
Wow, that's awesome, man. That's again, I mean, I know you weren't trying to give advice, but that's another great piece of advice right there, man. And I mean, I think that any musician that's trying to grow will always look back at their songs and not necessarily dislike them, but at least critique them and just think about what they could have done different to make that song better. Yeah,
exactly. It's like, oh man, it's like, what was I thinking? And I was like, it was cool for when it was, but It's like I would do it a complete different way, and I'm happy that I feel that way. It's not. That's like, okay, well, at least I'm getting better then.
Right. That's awesome, man. I mean, I'm here in Portland. I mean, I've got to see you and seen some of the things that you do. I mean, of course, I'm keeping an eye out for you. You know. And man, it's been great. Like I said, just to see some of the things that you've achieved. I didn't know that you went up to Canada and went to the East Coast and all that, man. But that's pretty awesome, man. Congratulations on what you've done thus far.
Oh, appreciate it. It was a wild, especially the East Coast was a wild time in a van. We were driving like 6 to 8 hours a day.
Wow.
I ended up doing tour managing, which I wasn't maybe equipped for, but I figured it out, and doing live sound and just kind of whatever experience I could get in at that point. It's like, it was wild though.
Well, that's what I was going to say, man. I mean, you may not have been equipped to do all of those things, but at least you got a little experience under your belt. So that's what's up. Okay, man. Well, I mean, you said, your greatest achievement is living the life that you would like to live. And I mean, I'm looking at you, man. I want to live the life that you're living because you're doing some pretty big things right now. And I'm sure all the beat grinders listening, they want to live the life that you're living as well. So if you can tell us what you do in a typical day, that way we can model our days after yours, and maybe we can live the life that you're living.
Yeah. So right now I've been doing music full time for the past 2 years.
Nice.
Prior to that, I was teaching, so I still was doing music too. So, but so right now, I try to wake up early because I'm not I don't get much done at night. I'm kind of like the opposite of most producers. Like once the sun goes down, it's way harder for me to be motivated. So I try to get up early. I exercise because otherwise I know I'm going to be sitting all day. So I try to at least get the blood pumping. And then most days I spend writing sample material.
Nice.
So I've been trying to keep up pace of doing 10 to 15 songs a month of like 2-3 minute samples, and I'll track everything. I'll play every instrument. And then I go back and I'll try to flip those into samples and to make beats out of them.
Nice.
But, there's not enough hours in the day to do what you want. But ideally, I'd like to get a couple samples done, flip them that night, and just kind of turn it back around. But everything kind of gets jumbled up. But ideally, the big things: wake up, exercise, make music, go to sleep.
Dope, man.
That's really the day.
That's a perfect day for me, man. I want to know, so you said you do about 10 to 15 samples per month. Are those like ones that you're ready to flip and give out to other producers? Or, I guess what I'm asking are there some that you scrap and some that is your goal to make 15 that you want to keep and you're scrapping the rest? Or
for the samples, I don't really throw much away because I look at it that somebody might find some gold in what I'm doing. I might not see it, but generally when people are flipping them that I've heard some things of like, I don't even recognize the song like that. And I'm like, okay, well, I guess that was in there. Didn't even think that was a cool part, but you liked it. So I've been trying to be, I'm not that critical on that. I just more focus, make sure the mix is clean. Mm-hmm. There's no noise. So those things are out of the way. And then everybody takes their own approach to it.
Right.
On the other hand, if I'm making beats, that's a different process. Those get scrapped much more often. I usually just make I'll make like an 8-bar loop or make a kind of a chorus and a verse section. Mm-hmm. I'll stem it out and I'll come back to it. And if I don't turn it on, be like, oh, I want to finish this, I just delete it. Okay. Or I'll put it in a folder of, I don't ever delete. I mark them with the right click and I turn the little file red or whatever on my Mac. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is like that. Those ones are dead to me.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess what I was asking, you said you make 10 to 15. I'm sure you're working on music every day. So what are you doing with the other days in the month? Are you doing anything different? I don't know if I'm making much sense.
Yeah, if I can get more done, I do. It usually takes me. Some days I'll have an idea of like, oh, I want to do something like this, and I'll start trying to record it, mm-hmm. and it'll end up me just kind of shedding and practicing on the instrument for like a couple hours, and then I don't ever actually get to track the part because I wanted to get my chops exactly how I wanted to play it.
Right.
Because some of the things I've been playing like horns, but I don't really play, like I have a sax that I don't really know how to play that well. Mm-hmm. So it takes me a little bit longer to get that. So I have to like learn some new techniques. And I'm like, okay, then I can get that, that 10-second part down. But I might spend 3 hours practicing in between.
Right. Okay. I got you.
It's a process.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Okay, and that's great to hear. For any of the beat grinders that that are listening, that you're frustrated because you can't get your ideas out. Listen to Samarei. He's making some pretty dope music, and it takes him 3 hours just to get a 10-second piece out. So
you can never predict how it's going to come out. Sometimes the best ideas are the first take, and you one take, and you're like, well, that's done. Right. On to the next. Or sometimes you're just going to take that labor of love to really just get just the right squeak out of that instrument. For me, sometimes that's what I'm like, oh, I wanted to get that perfect little mess up on that note, mm-hmm. and I'm going to leave it. So
nice. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Okay. All right, man. Well, this next portion of the interview, man, I like to call In the Studio. I can't be in the studio with you, man, and neither can any of the beat grinders listening, but we would love to, just because like all the stuff you're putting on Instagram, it just looks like so much fun to just play around in there. But the next best thing is this portion of the interview where we get to find out what you do in the studio and how you do things. So you ready?
Yep.
All right, man. What do you do when you start crafting beats? Do you have a set ritual? Do you have a drink? Do you light incense? Do you spark up? Is there anything that you do before you start making beats?
Before, not really. I always, this is a weird one. I always have to be like dressed to go out for the day. Like I can't be in like comfortable clothes. Like I gotta have my shoes on. I gotta have like my belt on. Like I gotta be like ready to leave at any moment. Otherwise I get too comfortable and I get distracted. If I'm making beats, I usually actually watch like Netflix while I make beats.
Nice. Okay.
Because this is a very solitary world for me, and I like that background noise. I like to have a lot of things going. But yeah, so I'll put on like a sitcom I've watched like a million times, something like Frasier, and just let them run in the background. Just to have that background noise.
Right. And it's something that you've seen a bunch of times, so you're really not paying attention to it. It's
exactly.
Awesome. Okay. And
it's like having somebody in the studio with you, just kind of like hanging out, but it's just
it's Frasier.
Yeah, it's just Frasier.
So do you have the sound up a little bit or completely off?
Usually on, which is weird for people. It throws people off when they see it, because I'll do that. I'll be playing on my phone.
Right.
I'll be making the beat. I'll like be tracking like a part on my machine. I'll be like playing the drums, and I'll be texting somebody, and I'll be watching a show.
Right.
It gets pretty frantic. There's a lot going on.
It works.
And I've always worked that way. Ever since I was a kid, I would always have like 3 things going while I worked. It just kind of it helps slow my brain down, I guess. I don't know. Nice.
Well, whatever you're doing, it's working, man. Keep doing it. So nice, man. Okay. Well, what's a not so secret weapon that you have in the studio?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, live instruments is kind of my thing. But I feel like that's kind of what's becoming kind of synonymous with my name and my style of production. Out of that, the weird thing I love is I got this little toy xylophone, or glockenspiel is what it should be called, but it's labeled a xylophone from Guitar Center, like at Black Friday. I love that thing. I put that on everything, just like little high chimey noises. Nice. Also, like one of the coolest things to do is just have a mic. So that you can record random shit. Okay. Like, being able to. I've used silverware in songs. I've used like just random shit I find on the table. Just being able to have like a way to just get like your creativity into it. So it's not. I don't like to be trapped with just software. It just feels it's too sterile for me. I like to have some noise and some life to things.
That's awesome, man. And you're adding your own sounds too, own unique sounds, which is awesome.
Yeah.
So do you have a portable recorder that you use to take out and record outside of your studio?
That's one of my future purchases. I feel like once I start doing that, it's gonna get out of hand. Yeah. Like I'm gonna get in a
good way, right?
Yeah, I'm just gonna get too deep into that. I'll have like a weird I'll have a whole backpack of stuff to hit against random things I find, and it'd be fun, but I don't think I'd get a lot else done. I could find myself getting really distracted by that. Yeah,
I can definitely see that. So, but if you do get one, everybody be on the lookout for a Samarei sound kit, right?
That is a goal at some point.
Okay.
I would love to do that. That basically would be the next step, and go record a bunch of random things I find, and then process it and kind of put my flavor on it and put it out there.
Man, we'll definitely be on the lookout for that, man.
Sure.
All right, man. Well, man, this should be fun, and this should probably be a nice list. Here, man, I want to know what is all in your toolbox. What equipment or software are you currently making beats with right now?
All right, we'll start software. It's a smaller list. My usual process is I start on the machine. That's one of my favorite. I still got the first version of it. I've never found a reason to upgrade yet. I like I want to because I got all the colors and things. But
right.
I go with Machine, and then I got the Universal Audio plugins because I got an Apollo Twin that I run things through. Mm-hmm. So I use those a lot. And then I do all of my extra tracking in Logic at this point.
Okay.
And sometimes I'll bounce the stems out in Mix and Pro Tools, but I've been trying to see how my workflow feels to stay in Logic for software wise. Like it just to kind of skip that extra step if I can get used to it. Right. I learned how to mix in Pro Tools, so I like to go to it, but it takes so much extra time that I'm trying to wean off of that one. Hardware wise, let's see. I'm just gonna look around here. We got a Korg Mini Log. I got a Rolly Seaboard, ASR 10. I got an old Mark I Rhodes, Moog Prodigy, and then I got a handful of guitars, bass, saxophone, trumpet. I have an upright piano, upright bass.
Wow.
What else am I missing? I feel like I'm missing more stuff, but yeah, I got a lot of instruments, and that's what I've been trying to keep the focus on lately.
Nice. Past Beats Grinding Life guest Evo was saying he feels like he's moving backwards. Everyone is buying up all the software that they can, and he, on the other hand, is buying up all the instruments that he can. Do you kind of feel like you're moving backwards in a way, or unparalleled to everyone else?
Yeah, that's an interesting look on it, because yeah, I know there's all these sweet like VSTs and stuff. Really the only like VSTs I use anymore are like the Arturia collection. Okay. And those are all just modeled synths, so it's still, they're still kind of
off of hardware.
That vintage. Yeah. And I've seen like stuff like Omnisphere. That stuff looks so cool. That is a new can of worms for me to open. And
exactly. It is a can of worms, man. I'm sure you would have fun with it.
I would, and it's like they look cool. It's just like I need more limitations personally. I need like hard limits of what I can do with something.
Right.
Because if I have thousands and thousands of sounds to click through, I'll spend hours clicking through them instead of just playing something and moving on.
Right. Yeah, for sure, man. For sure. Well, I mean, and what I told Evo is that, I feel like instead of him moving backwards, he's moving forward, because it seems like a lot more producers are moving into hardware. I mean, just from what I've seen, because a lot of people are into sound design now. So a lot of people want unique sounds. If everyone else is moving into software, I'm seeing a few producers moving into instruments and hardware, trying to find old synths that are hard to find, So I don't necessarily see it as backwards, maybe unparalleled to everyone else, but
it might even be before its time, because like things are shifting with what you can and can't do making beats and things like that. So I think that people are, it might be a new kind of wave with everything.
Yep, exactly. And that's exactly what I said is a new wave. So that's what's up, man. That's awesome. There were some things that you mentioned that I'm familiar with. There's some things that you mentioned that I'm not familiar with. And I'm sure that goes with all the beat grinders listening. So if you want to find out everything that Samarei mentioned, I will have it on the website under Samarai's show notes. So, oh yeah, I want to ask you, what's your favorite? You said you had a bunch of guitars. What's your favorite guitar out of all of those?
I have this kind of like entry level, like Yamaha semi-hollow, like jazz guitar, and I got it because I didn't want to go to my first day at Portland State and have like a rock guitar and go in with all the jazz guys and look stupid.
Right.
So I was like, okay, I'll just check this thing out. And I picked it up, and like the feel of the instrument is exactly what I like. So I gutted all the electronics out of it and replaced it with all like vintage stuff and like higher end boutique electronics, and now like each of the pickups is probably more valuable than like the guitar itself because it wasn't something very nice to begin with. But dope. It's like it's my special, there's not another guitar like it.
That's awesome, man. Here's just a question, random question, man. For someone maybe like myself that's interested in buying a guitar, what do you think is a good entry-level guitar to buy?
For entry-level stuff, I like the Ibanez guitars. Okay. I've never been like, they have like the Squire line of like the Fender stuff, which I've never found a whole lot of those that I liked.
Okay.
I used to teach like 30 students a week guitar, and like they would all come in with those, and I just never found one that was set up nicely that made it actually easy to learn.
And those are I feel like out the most popular, right?
Yeah, those are like the go-to. You put another $20 in, you might be able to find something a little better. Okay. Is usually where I'm at. That the hard thing with an entry-level instrument is you never know if you're gonna keep it or like keep with it, but it's really hard to learn on a bad instrument. And it makes it so much more difficult, and it's so much easier to get discouraged on something that you can't actually play well on.
So do you think that, just for starting out, do you think someone should just go ahead and buy something that they think that they'll keep for a while, instead of just buying like a entry-level cheap guitar?
I'd say one step up from the bottom.
Okay, nice.
Like that's usually where I go. Like, not something that if you're like, oh, this is what I want to do, that you feel bad at buying something else, but you don't want to go for the low end. Right. Like that will usually put you in a hard place when you try to learn it.
Nice. Great advice, man. Thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, this next portion of the interview is called In the Mix. It's kind of like rapid fire. We're going to speed things up just a little bit. Cool. But if you need to take your time to answer the question thoroughly, man, we definitely understand, and please do. You ready to go?
Yep.
All right, man. Do you prefer making beats with samples or without samples?
Trick question for me. I make all my own samples.
All right. What's your opinion on selling and leasing beats online?
Definitely not leasing beats. It's art. It's not Arby's. In my opinion. I mean, no knock to people doing it, but I just can't imagine having two of the same song out there. Yeah. Selling beats, I don't even post online anymore. I like to work primarily with people in the studio.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Plug-in that you think every producer should have in their arsenal?
Some sort of tape saturation.
Nice. Okay. Do you have a book that you think every producer should read? And it doesn't have to be music related, but if it is, great.
I'm not much of a reader. Okay. I couldn't tell you the last book I did read. But if you are a producer, you should probably read the instruction manuals to your gear.
No, that's a great answer right there.
They put them in there for a reason. Yep. You should read them.
Awesome. Okay. Is there an internet resource that you use that you think every producer could benefit from? And when I say internet resource, I mean an app or a website.
I have there's like some really good basic music theory apps that I think everybody should do if they're playing music, so you can have a common language with people. There's even a website, it's like musictheory.net, and it has little ear training things, and it teaches you just real fundamental stuff, so you can kind of identify if something's out of tune, really is what you'll get out of it. But
awesome.
Yeah.
Wow, that's dope, man. Thank you for that. There was a past guest, I can't remember who it was, and they were saying you want to learn you definitely want to learn an instrument because there's a certain language that all musicians speak, and if you are a producer that just presses buttons and you can't speak that language, you may be fucked in a studio session. So
yeah, if I look over and say, hey, can you play a C for me on the piano, and
right.
Like if it's sitting right there and you don't, I'm gonna get a little frustrated.
Right. Nice, man. So that definitely sounds like a great resource. So thank you for that, man.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know much about your political views, and I don't know about the political views of other listeners on here, but I'm just gonna go ahead and say it, man. F it. President Trump messed it up for all producers, man. I mean, for all presidents. So they're wiping off all of the faces on Mount Rushmore. No more presidents' faces on there. We're putting up producers. But it's your job to figure out what 4 producers are going up on Mount Rushmore.
Dre.
Nice. Okay.
Kanye. Dilla. And I do know that there's 4 on Mount Rushmore, so I'm going to put one more. That's a tougher one. That last spot could rotate, but I'll say, for the sake of continuity through the interview, let's put RZA.
Nice. Okay. Everyone has a hard time with that last one, so you're definitely not the only one. But all of those guys have been mentioned before. They've been mentioned for a reason. They're all legendary, all legends. They all started their own lane, and man, that's a great 4, man. I would love to see those 4 up on Mount Rushmore. So, all right, man. I'd want you to imagine that you just woke up from the perfect dream, and in that dream, it was a studio session. And in that studio session, you had one artist with you, one producer to co-produce along with yourself, one engineer, and one random person. Who are those 4 people going to be?
I'm going to make a tricky one just because I think it'd be weird. I'm going to say Dr. Dre, Kanye West, Tyler, the Creator for the first 3 parts of it, primarily because they could all kind of switch.
Yep.
And I kind of like that because I think you might get something real interesting. And a random person, I'd want somebody who's doing something. I'd put Anderson .Paak in there to play live drums.
Oh my God.
Or some other live instrumentalist. I just like the flexibility. I'm going like Golden State mode here. Just having like positionless team. Everybody can switch chairs.
Right. That's dope, man. Perfect, man. All those guys are multi-talented and can do pretty much any of the, like you said, anything in the studio. So that's one of the best answers I've heard thus far, man. That's great, man.
I don't know if the song would sound good, but it would be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I bet it would sound great, man. It would sound. Some of those guys have already worked together, and then you add you in there, and man, I think you guys can make magic happen. I think you can make a dope EP.
Be cool.
Yeah, man, it would be cool. All right, man. Well, what's your favorite song that you ever produced?
Man, that's a tough one. I would say that I like a lot of the stuff that I put out. I put out a producer project a couple of years back. I think it was like 4 years ago. I don't even know. And a lot of those songs are pretty close to my heart because I got a lot of my friends on there.
Nice.
People that I've worked with or wanted to work with. And like kind of all of those were like really cool experiences for me. Outside of that, man, that's a tough one. I would say one of my favorite ones that's out would be, I like doing the track Sleep Paralysis that I co-produced with Trox because it was one of the first ones that we did with one of the samples.
Nice.
For Vinny Dwayne. That was a fun song.
Okay.
Also, Asada for Glenn Waco is one of my favorite ones that I've done.
Wow.
Because I got to play. Well, I did guitar on that, and I got to actually play. And one of the ones that people are like, "Oh, you played guitar on that," and kind of built that instrumentalist part into it that I get recognized on.
I was gonna say that I didn't know that you played on there.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah.
That's dope. Okay, I'm gonna re-listen to that today then. That's awesome.
Definitely. Yeah, it's in the background. It's one of my favorite ones to do live too because I can just kind of let loose and play over it. But
yeah, nice, man, nice. Okay, that's awesome, man. Well, Beat Grinders, if you guys want to check out either of those songs, please do. I can vouch for both of those songs and say that they're pretty dope. So, and also, we didn't mention that you and Trox have a group together, have a production group as well together. So
yeah, Two Sams Can. We've been quietly working on a bunch of stuff, and that was one of the first songs that we did together that came out, the Sleep Paralysis one, and we've been stacking up a lot of beats, so
awesome,
it's
man.
exciting.
Dope. Okay. All right, what's an album besides one that you worked on that you recommend every producer listen to, and why?
I would say College Dropout would be one for me. Just thematically, the album kind of had the flow of the album. The production's super interesting. It goes back and forth as one of my favorite Kanye albums, and that's...
What's the other?
Probably a Low End Theory.
Okay.
I like that album just because of the musicality of it was something that's missing in a lot of hip hop music. And they got a Ron Carter feature on there playing bass, which is crazy. And just kind of the nuanced approach, and just kind of took it from a different spot. Q-Tip was the other person I was trying to decide between for RZA. Just because that album alone is like in my top 5, I think, just because it was different. And that's what I probably respect the most out of an album. And a producer is somebody who will take a risk and might make something that people don't get initially, but that ages well.
Yep. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, I mean, either way, RZA or Q-Tip on that list, man, it still would have made a great top 4. But yeah, those albums are definitely great albums. Five mics, whatever. And yeah, every producer should listen to both of those. So Beat Grinders, if you guys haven't listened to them, I'll have a link up on the website under Samarei show notes. So, all right, man. Okay, well, if you woke up tomorrow and you lost everything that you had except for your knowledge and $1,000, so you lost all of your contacts, you don't have any instruments or anything, but you still have the ability to play and the knowledge to play those instruments, what would you do in the next week to restart your career?
Man, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I think one of the most important and overlooked things when you're trying to be a musician is making sure you're actually in a stable environment. And that doesn't sound like one to me. Because it's hard to be creative when your life literally depends on it.
Right.
And that's a hard place to work from.
Wow.
So I would say if I needed to make something from music, I'd probably get something all inclusive like a 404 or something that I could just sample and output from. Something just very basic, because as much money as you can save to kind of live off, you don't want to go like, oh, I'm going to find something that's $999 and like, all right, well, what am I going to eat?
Right.
It's like you only got, a good probably day and a half of using whatever you buy before you get too hungry.
Yep.
So I think that the big thing is you need to make sure you're set, because it's hard to make a push in the music business if you're not like stable.
Wow.
Like if every shot you're taking is a Hail Mary, like that's not comfortable.
Right. Yeah. You only got 4 downs. So
yeah, you want to be moving forward inch by inch. The stories you hear of people going from rags to riches in one night are rare at best and fabricated usually. I feel.
Wow.
They leave out a lot of the in between. Like people are like, people talk like, oh, Macklemore made Thrift Shop and just blew up. He also rapped for 10 years before that.
Yeah, right. Yep.
And made it's like, no, he worked. Everybody who does that has worked behind the scenes before that.
Yep.
And it's like you need to be able to put in the amount of work, and that's why you got to be able to be consistent and be able to sustain.
That's a great answer, man. I mean, I've heard all kind of answers for this question, man, and that one is different. No one's gave us that perspective. And so,
I figured most people be like, oh, I'd buy this, I'd buy that. But
yep.
I don't buy shit. I save my money.
The only one that said he wouldn't buy anything, and I could be wrong, is I think Focus said all he would do.
That sounds like something that Focus would say.
He's just like, I would pray and just keep that money as long as I got my kids with me, and I would just pray. But your answer is
backup answer was to jump ship and do something different.
But you still have that desire to for music, to make music.
Yeah,
so.
It couldn't, so it wouldn't be on. I mean, that would be the logical advice.
Right. But no, man. Thank you for that answer, man. That was a great one, man. All right, man. Well, I want to know, man, what is your idea of legacy? And when your career is all said and done, I can never imagine you being done with music. But, when it's over, what do you want your legacy to be?
The biggest and simplest way is somebody who did something different. Because you're not going to be remembered if you're one of the million cookie cutter people following trends.
Yep.
I remember when I did that first iStandard, I was trying to make beats that I thought people would like. And I didn't do, they still were kind of like what I was doing, but I remember, I think it was Rockwilder. He's like, I remember afterwards, like they called the top 3 or whatever. And he was like, he pulled me aside. He's like, it's like, whatever you were doing was different. If you can find rappers who like it, do it.
Yep.
And don't change, but don't expect people to come flocking to you because it's like universally approachable. And like, that was one of the biggest pieces of advice that I had that also kind of like helped shape my whole like vision on what I was doing and what I wanted to do. And it was to make the music that I wanted to make and push the boundaries that I don't think should be there.
Man, out of all of those people that received advice that night, I don't know why, but the advice he gave you stuck out to me, and I always remember that. I remember him saying, you're different, and you need to find artists that are different as well, and you guys do you. And he mentioned Schoolboy Q. He was like, you need to find someone that has a different sound like Schoolboy Q, and just work with that person. And so I don't know why that stuck with me, man, but for some reason
it was helpful. Right. I remember because I took my little score sheet with all my critique and I tacked it on the wall behind my my computer monitor. I left it up for a year.
Right.
And like every time I looked at it, I was like, am I making something that's cool? Am I making something that I think other people will like? And I remember I took that kind of advice and I started kind of playing with it for the next time I did it. And like at that point I had like 1 or 2 songs that I played instruments on for the next round. And then I remember Trox was judging it at that point, which is funny. And he was like, he knew I played instruments. He's like, why aren't you playing on everything?
Wow.
And that was like another one of those things, like legacy. Like you want to do what is who you are.
Right. Yeah.
Like I would be doing myself a disservice if I was making rapper type beats like you see on YouTube. Like it's not what I do.
Right.
Those guys are really, really good at making and emulating a sound of what's hot. And like, you got your slidey 808s, you got your little plucky synths and stuff. I mean, it's not authentic.
Yep.
And it's not going to leave a lasting impression of what my sound is. You hear a Dre beat and you know it's a Dre beat.
Yeah.
Because you got those pianos, you got the strings, you have the drums a certain way. And if you want to be impactful and leave kind of a lasting mark, you have to find what it is that you can do that other people can't.
That's awesome, man. That's dope. And I mean, you said you hear the Dre beats, you know it's a Dre beat, but why are they Dre beats? Because that sound resonates with him, and he wasn't trying to be like anyone else. He was doing him, and now they're Dre beats,
Yeah.
Same with every other producer, especially the ones that you mentioned.
They all kind of had that common thread. Yeah. You have, a RZA beat, it's like, well, that sounds like it could have 4 more layers on it.
Right.
But it doesn't need it.
Right.
A Dilla beat, because it just swings and knocks in a way that nobody else can really do. And I feel like Kanye kind of tried to embody a lot of those other characteristics from people and kind of put it together, but his sampling chops are just different.
Right.
You just kind of hear it, and like he's one person that isn't afraid to fuck up.
Yep. That's so.
Because a lot of people don't like some of his music, and I think that's cool that people are like, oh, he's one of my favorite, but I hate this album. I think that's a cool thing to be able to say about somebody.
Yep. That's so true, man. And you said he's not afraid to fuck up. Like, I don't know why the story sticks out to me, but the song Barry Bonds that he did with Lil Wayne, he got that beat from Knots, and Knots was like, the beat's not finished, let me finish it. And you're like, nope, I like it how it is. It was, even though it wasn't complete to someone else, it was perfect for him, and he went, nope, regardless of what Knots thought about it, he thought, hey, it's a banger. It's going to be a banger for me, and I'm just going to go ahead and do it. But man, just hearing what you're saying about legacy, and you want to do things your way because it's genuine to you, man. That's awesome, and that's another great piece of advice that other producers listening today that are trying to make a way, definitely need to hear. Be you, do you, because if you try to do someone else, if you try to sound like Kanye or Dre, you're not going to stand out, and you're not going to be a legendary producer. That's just facts. So
yeah, you might even get one placement if you do that. You might be like, oh yeah, I made this one track. It was a Drake. I wanted to sound like Drake, so I made a beat like Drake, and then it's like, what happens for the next one? You only knew how to make a beat that sounded like something 40 did.
Yep.
And
so
that's not, there's no longevity in there. You might get a quick paycheck, but you won't be able to get that second one and the third one and the fourth one. That's kind of, you got to be able to follow it up.
Yep. All right, man. Well, you probably already answered this next question, man, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What's the greatest piece of advice that you've received, and what's the greatest piece of advice that you have for the producers listening today?
I'm going to try something new that I haven't said. I feel like I feel like I've inadvertently dropped some gems here. Let's see. Man, am I out? Am I out of advice? No, I mean, overall is just do you. I mean, you can simplify it down to that. Mm-hmm. If it's not something like that you want to do, don't do it. If it's not someone that's authentic to you, don't do it. And when somebody tells you that you're fucking up, you might be. Don't have an ego about it, because that's one of those things that you got to get rid of if you want to be successful doing this. Like, there's always going to be, there's always people who are better at you at one particular thing. You might be more well-rounded, or you might be, but there's always somebody who's better than you at something. So don't pretend like you're not. Like, that's not the case. Like, find what you're good at, be the expert in what you're good at, and take advice when you should.
Dope, man. Dope. So are you saying not necessarily? Are you saying just follow your strengths and not work on your weaknesses? Or I mean, being well-rounded is important. I feel like knowing what is your strength in that time, mm-hmm. and what the things that you're trying to build up around it. Okay. Because you should. I think you should be a jack of all trades kind of approach to things is great. Mm-hmm. But I know that, for instance, like, if somebody's like, oh, I heard that sample you played and that trumpet part was cool, but I think it could be better if we got so-and-so to play. I'd be like, yeah, it would be better. I don't play trumpet. Right.
You should have seen how I had to record that. Like,
right.
Knowing when to put your pride aside and know that somebody might be able to bring something fresh to it. Like, because it's hard when it's like your art and you're trying to be protective of something you created, but sometimes other people do have good ideas. Yep. And it's hard to take them sometimes, and it's hard to take criticism, and that's one of those things that you have to learn. It's not like you can oh, well, I don't do very good at this, but it'll be fine. Like, if you can't take criticism and you're trying to make music, that's not going to work out well.
Awesome, man.
Because people will tell you what you're good at.
Right. Yep.
And what you're not.
And what you're not. Yeah. People will definitely let you know. I mean, those are the people that you want around you too, for sure.
Exactly.
So awesome, man. Awesome. That's a great piece of advice. Something that I can definitely put in my back pocket and keep with me for a while. And hopefully all of the beat grinders listening can do the same thing. I mean, we all have to push our ego to the side, and I know I definitely need to do that. Hey, if I would have, I'd probably be a lot further than I am today. So thank you.
Same here.
Yeah. Thank you for that advice, man.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right, man. Well, we just about reached the end of the show, man. It's been a great one, man. But I want to know before we get off, man, if you have any more words for the listeners, if you want to let them know, what they might be able to listen from you, or what they might be able to cop from you, or what you're working on that we can look forward to, and also how to contact you if you want to be contacted.
Yeah, so let's see. As far as things to listen to, there's that old producer project I was talking about, Best in Class. It's up on Spotify and other streaming services now. It's got some cool stuff on it. But like we talked about, it's old for me, so I would like to, I'm looking at doing another one of those in the future here.
Still dope music, regardless.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I know I like that one. It's just like, but now I'm excited to do something more. So I want to do another producer project here in the future. You can hear a lot of what I'm doing on Instagram. It's at Samarei Music, and that's it'll be spelled out, so I'm not going to spell it because that sounds weird. And I'm not very up on a lot of the social media stuff, but I like that because I can post videos, and so that you can check out a lot of the samples and beats that I'm making as I'm doing them. Otherwise, and I'll post any releases. That's really that's my main form of communication and touch to the outside world. So that has a little bit of everything.
Dope.
But hopefully there'll be some, there's always, I feel like, songs in the works. It's just a matter of when they come out, kind of thing. So I'm sure you'll be seeing some more things, and there's some stuff on Team Backpack that I've done, and there's all sorts of fun stuff out there if you look hard enough.
Dope. Well, whatever I come across, I'll definitely post it up on Instagram. So, that's I'm mainly on Instagram as well. So I'll definitely repost stuff on Instagram and get it out so that the beat grinders will be able to check it out as well. So.
Dope.
Thank you, man. All right. Well, beat grinders, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Beats Grinding Life. Really appreciate it. If you guys found this show of value, which I'm pretty sure you have because Samarei has been dropping gems left and right, please share it on Instagram, on Insta Stories, all that good stuff, and tag me and Samarei in it as well so that we can see it. Also, be sure to rate and review this podcast on iTunes, and if you're listening on SoundCloud, give us a like as well. You guys, this week you have been mentored by Samarei, so you guys consider yourselves lucky, and keep making beats, stay on your grind, and live life. Peace out.
Peace.
Here at Beats Grinding Life, we want to thank you for listening to another episode. We want to know, what were your biggest takeaways from this interview? Just go to beatsgrindinglife.com and leave a comment on this episode's show notes page. Also, while you are there, go subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Just click the little button that says subscribe. If you could, please leave a rating and review. Rating and reviews are the best way to show your appreciation because it helps more people find out about the podcast. So until next week's episode, keep grinding.